in your career, in your calling.
Right.
All of those things are at stake. Porn will destroy them if we let it.
So what's the downside to not quitting porn before marriage?
The downside is you no longer have just one recovery to go through. You have 3 recoveries.
Please expand.
3, yeah.
It gets so much harder because you as an individual have to recover, which, as we all know, is the hardest spirit-filled work you will ever do in your life.
Amen and amen.
Then your partner has to recover because they're going through betrayal, trauma, and that is incredibly difficult. And then your relationship has to recover. So you have 2 individuals going through incredibly difficult journeys, and then they need to restore trust in a relationship. That gets very painful and very expensive.
Amen to that.
Yes, 100%. I think, so practically for me, a little bit of my story, if you haven't heard it, I started in a Pure Desire group when I was engaged. I had a couple months until I got married when I started, and I'm so thankful I started even then. But what I saw is that pornography created unrealistic expectations of what sex would be in marriage to the detriment of my relationship, to where I thought we needed to be having it this often and it needed to look like this and have this sort of intensity, and she needed to love every time, and like all these things. And then you get into marriage and you're like, this is not, I mean, you talk about this wall drug, right? I've heard you use this example of you think that something's going to be this thing, and then you get there and like, that's it. Yeah. And not that sex isn't great and God designed and super awesome, but what I'm saying is I had these, to coin or to use a phrase that was coined by Mo Isom, sexpectations. I walked into marriage expecting it to be this, and it wasn't. And immediately, Drew's laughing right now at the sexpectations thing. Thanks, Mo. I love that analogy. But I walked in, and immediately what happened was I felt like either there's something wrong with me, there's something wrong with my wife, or worse, there's something wrong with the marriage.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think that's one of the greatest unhad conversations in Christianity is young couples getting married that have all these expectations, and when it's not going perfectly, like there's nowhere to go to have that conversation. And so that's why I'm glad we do the podcast and are talking about this today. And my experience going into marriage, I'd heard enough married guys talk that I knew marriage and having sex with my wife wasn't going to fix me. But I definitely thought that just getting older, like growing up, I would just outgrow these struggles with pornography and everything. But you find that reality that you can grow a lot in some areas of your life and stay really, really stuck in other areas. That just because you're growing in your profession, in your spirituality, and even in relationships, because I'm now married and we're buying a house, and so there were a lot of ways I was growing, but my sexuality stayed stuck because there was no one that was helping me process it. And so that's what I love about what you're doing, Drew, is you're being intentional to say you need a coach, you need a guide. As you're getting ready for marriage, you can't just do these things on your own because you got all these blind spots. So let's work on it. Let's deal. Let's get healthy. So that's the flip side of what are the pros and the benefits of dealing with your issues, whether it's pornography or other kinds of sexually compulsive behavior. What are the pros of doing that prior to marriage?
Yeah, no more secrets, no more shame. You get to go into this marriage with your wife's complete confidence in you, knowing that she can trust you. She doesn't have to worry about your sexual behavior. She doesn't have to worry that this problem will continue and it will affect your children one day. A lot of guys don't realize what is at stake. And I wish I could find my friends and mentors who are in their 60s, who have lost marriages, who have shattered families, and gone through recovery so much later, who could come back and say, hey guys, like you don't realize what's at stake. Your faith, your family, and future are all on the line right now. And if you can save your marriage before it starts, that will have amazing ripple effects for you and future generations.
Yeah, I mean that future generations thing is so key. I've got at the time of this recording, I have one son and then another baby boy on the way. And man, I'm telling you right now, I am so thankful I got healthy when I did. I'm so thankful that people were willing to challenge me and to push me into getting into recovery, because the framework I have for sexuality is completely changed, and the type of father I can be, the lack of shame that I carry, and the really the ability to be present with my kids, and to be present with the brokenness I still carry in my life, and know that, hey, there's hope for me to heal, and there's a future that I still have. I mean, I think about, using your example of those guys who are in their 60s. Just think about the ripple effect that you can have on your kids, and then your grandkids and your great grandkids, and then think about not just in your family, but then the relationships those like your family will have outside of your immediate family, and the ripple effect that it can cause going on and on. And so for me, I mean, I'm just wearing the dad hat. So for me, this is the biggest thing apart from your own development as an individual. The type of life you can offer your kids and your family is completely better.
Yeah. Yeah. As I hear you guys talk, it just occurs to me that the challenge we all face when we're, young in life, looking to get married, and it's the same challenge that can exist in any season of life, is we feel like, yeah, I hear you guys and I hear the horror stories, but that won't happen to me. Right. And so we wait, we push it off, and we can do that in our 20s and our 30s and our 40s, where we're like, well, yeah, I've got some struggles, but we get caught up in this denial and rationalization that I can keep it under control. It won't go too far. I won't cross certain lines, and so I don't need the kind of help they're talking about. And yet in every story I've heard, that's what everybody thought, that everybody thought it won't go too far. That won't happen to me. No one ever thinks it. Like, I've never, ever met a young person who's like, yeah, I'm probably going to struggle with porn off and on for 10 years and then get divorced because I can't quit it. Like, no one thinks that will happen.
Plans for it, right?
But that happens all the time. And so I hope in this episode, whether you're a young person looking to get married or you're a middle-aged person who is married, who's still dealing with some of your stuff, to just recognize for all of us, there's that part of us that doesn't want to do this, because health is hard. Health is challenging. 100%. It's revealing. You have to be vulnerable. Like, it's not easy. Like you just said, Drew, it's like the hardest, most rewarding thing you'll ever do. And so if we can just recognize that up front here, like, whatever age you're at, there's stuff here you don't want to do. But if you can hear others and hear some stories here and say, you know what, it'd be better to deal with it now than to wait another 10 years, then there's incredible value in what we're doing today.
Yep.
Yeah. And some guys look at some of these programs of getting into a group, or especially doing one-on-one counseling or coaching, and think, oh man, that's too expensive. What they don't realize is, if you drift down this path, which ultimately leads to potential of divorce, that is going to cost you way more down the line. Mm-hmm. I had a client who said if he got divorced, it would cost him $1 million. Oh my gosh. 3 kids. He lives in the Bay Area. And for him, divorce would cost $1 million. So a few thousand is nothing compared to that.
Yeah. Well, or the flip side is, what is it keeping me from? Because the truth is, if we're wrapped up in our sexual stuff and a binge purge relationship with pornography or other behaviors, like, there are opportunities and ways of growth that we'll never get to, because we're just going to be kind of stuck in that old stuff. And you can also think the positive side. Like, I mean, I look at you, Drew, and wonder what kind of, person would you be at 27 now had you not dealt with this as a young man? Like, what choices would you be making? And so not only is it, the costs that it could have if I get divorced, but what are the costs that right now I'm giving up on just because I'm not healthy enough to pursue the kind of stuff God really made me for?
Yeah.
In your career, in your calling,
right?
All of those things are at stake. Porn will destroy them if you let it.